In this video tutorial, we will learn how to use the PowerPac function pgTBObjSet to manipulate the visibility of objects. Our goal is to do this. We will draw 3 objects on the page. We will give each object a unique name. And then we will use pgTBObjSet to first of all hide each object, and then after a delay of 2 seconds to make that object reappear. So to begin our lesson, let's draw the 3 objects on our page. There's our 3 objects. Remember, we need to give each of the objects a unique name. Let's use Object 1, Object 2, and Object 3. Now that we have our objects named, I'll select all of them and give them a color so that we can observe the effect when finally our project is exported for the web. Now we'll select our first object and begin using pgTBObjSet to manipulate it. We bring up the Actions Editor, make sure that our object is shown in the title bar of the Actions Editor, and that the on-click event is the one that's highlighted. To run PowerPac functions, we use the Execute Script action located under the General tab in the Actions Editor. Simply drag it over into the editing area and select the appropriate function from the drop-down list. In this case, we scroll down until we find pgTBObjSet. Once we've selected the function, now we go and change the properties for that function so that it knows what to do. In this case, the object name that we want to manipulate is called nameOfSelf. That tells the Action Editor that the object on which this script is placed is the target of our action. The property that we want to manipulate is the visible of the object, and the setting that we want is to set it to false or to be hidden. We save that. And now what we want to do is immediately after hiding the object, we want to wait 2 seconds and show it. The same function can be used for that purpose. Let's just copy it and paste it in place again. This time we'll change the properties so that instead of hiding the object, we set the object's visibility to true, but we specify a delay before it becomes visible of 2000 milliseconds or 2 seconds. So now let's review what we've accomplished with our actions. Our first action hides the object. Our second action will make the object reappear after 2 seconds. Sometimes what I like to do is add a little comment between PowerPac functions to explain what actually is taking place. That way, later on when I'm editing my actions, I know exactly what each one does. Now because each object is going to do the same thing, let's just take our actions again from Object 1 and copy them to each of the other objects on the page. We'll paste them in here for Object 2, and then we'll take Object 3 and we'll paste them here as well. Now, all of our objects have been energized and manipulated with pgTBObjSet. All we need to do now is export our page and observe the effect. We'll just export this page to speed things up a little bit. And now let's take a look at the results of our work. Here's our 3 objects. Remember, by clicking them, the object should hide and then reappear after 2 seconds. And notice that is exactly the effect that we've achieved. We can click all 3 objects in rapid succession, and in rapid succession they'll reappear. We can click them in any order, and the actions will handle the rest of the tasks for us. Now, while this works for single objects, it also works for groups of objects. Let's take a look at the same behavior placed on a group instead of on single objects. Let's first of all remove our actions from 2 of our objects so that we can begin group manipulation. So we're going to take the actions off of objects 2 and 3. Then we'll select all of our objects, group them together, and give our group a name. We'll call it My Group. We'll take the actions from our first object, we'll cut them, and we'll place them on the entire group for the, now here we have group, My Group, the onClick event. Let's paste our actions here. In order for this to work on a group though, we need to adjust the properties for our actions slightly. Instead of the object name being name of self, which would point to the group, instead of the individual objects within the group, let's change this to name of target. Now, the actions editor understands that instead of manipulating the group as a whole, we just want to manipulate the actual object within the group that was clicked. And we'll do the same for our second one. There we go. Now notice when we export our page that with our actions on the group, we are able to create the same effect that you saw previously. Now here's our group of objects. When I click on them, notice the target is the object within the group, and the group is handling all the actions for us. So you can use pgTBObjSet on single objects or grouped objects. The choice is up to you and what is most practical for your application. pgTBObjSet has advantages over the normal actions editor object property actions in that, number 1, it is dynamic, and you can use a string to locate your objects on the page. Number 2, it works inside of loops where the name of the object being manipulated is dynamically generated. Number 3, it can handle delay property, it can handle delays as well for single objects and for groups. And its delay mechanism works in the action system regardless of whether the function is nested or within a loop. And finally, pgTBObjSet can manipulate more properties than are currently available using normal object property actions. For example, the function can insert HTML text or change the inverted property of a button.